children, I find, sometimes grow estranged from their parents also because of that. Not because their parents don't love them enough, but because there's so much, too much love coming at them, not in the way that they want to be loved. That love has become imposing. That love has become suffocating almost, to the point that the children want to tear away from that kind of love. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Experimental Parent with me, Jasmine Jialing. This week we'll be talking about it takes a village to raise a child, but who runs it? For many first-time parents or even parents-to-be, I'm sure the topic of caregiving and who is going to take care of the child often comes into your conversations. And it can be quite a delicate balancing act when we are trying to figure out who can help us with the caregiving of our children, especially when it is very difficult for working parents to care full-time for their children. In Singapore's context, many families are dual income families, meaning both daddies and mummies have to go to work. And once that 16-week maternity leave is used up, the question of who is going to care for the child is always the big question. So for my family, between my in-laws, my parents, and me and my husband, we have already established early on, and it was the wish of all parties that my husband, me, and our child form an independent family nucleus once we grow a family of our own. That being said, the grandparents, of course, are still very welcome to come and spend time with the children whenever they want to. And if they would like to spend more time and they wish to come over or for us to visit them often, that was always welcome, and that was always the plan. Because my in-laws are still working and my parents have retired and they have their own retirement plans, this arrangement worked out very well for us. So they could still live their own lives, they could still do whatever they wanted to pursue in their golden years, but they're always welcome to spend time with the grandchildren. As a measure, we always dedicate at least 2 weekends to either grandparents. So it could be every fortnightly with maternal grandparents, and then the other fortnight for the paternal grandparents. So that's a nice balance where the children still get to see their grandparents and bond with them and spend enough time with them to build a good grandparent-grandchildren bond. But at the same time, it wasn't weighing down too much on my parents or my in-laws for them to always be a grandparent, to always be there for their grandchildren, and they can't do whatever they want. So they're still very free to go on holidays, and they really enjoy it, to travel a lot more than they could have in the years that they were still working. And also, for my in-laws, with their plans, with their friends, they could still go ahead with that. But then those protected time, those protected weekends, they are wholeheartedly there for our children. So our children have a very nice relationship with their grandparents. They love them and they look forward to spending time with them. But it also gives us sufficient space to grow our own family, to figure out what was the dynamics of our family going to be like, but also enough space for my husband and I to have autonomy over our children's upbringing and discipline. So that was all mutually agreed on with our parents, and we enjoy a very balanced parent-child and grandparent-grandchildren relationship overall. But of course, for that to happen, for both our grandparents to not have any additional burden of having to look after the children for us and still be able to enjoy their plans and their lives and just come and spend time with the kids wherever they want to. For them to be able to do that, we needed to engage help to look after our children because both my husband and I work full-time. So we were very fortunate to have the help of a very able and a very wonderful helper whom we trust a lot. She is incredible with the children, and she's even better able to manage the household than I can. So I largely leave a lot of the household matters to her, and when I need help with the children, like sending them to and fro school and the daily caregiving needs while I am at work, I can trust her to do that. So both grandparents are very happy to be able to outsource the heavy lifting to my very able helper, and whenever they come, they will try their best to help out, and they get to do all the fun things and spend really quality time with their grandchildren. Now, I also understand that some families go by a different kind of dynamic. For them, that village involves their parents being full-time caregivers or part-time caregivers of their children while they are at work. And again, this is mutually agreed upon by both the grandparents and the parents, where of course who better to trust with your children than your own parents, right? And of course the grandparents are also probably very happy to be able to go through this babyhood and the whole cuteness of young children all over again with a much lighter load, I feel. We always talk about how our parents used to be so strict with us, but then now as grandparents, they are always like just letting the child do whatever makes them happy, right? I remember when I was a kid, my parents would confiscate the remote control on school holidays because they think I watch too much TV. But then now with the children, when they come over, they're always like, oh, okay, do you want to watch TV? I'll switch it on for you. So it's really cute to see that grandparent-grandchild dynamic happening also at this stage in life. But why I wanted to talk about this topic this week was because in my conversations with a lot of friends and fellow parents, I do notice that there is always going to be some form of conflict along the way when we are building that village. And that sometimes stems from a difference in expectations between the parents, the grandparents, and all the other extended family. So no doubt it takes a village to raise a child because one can only do so much being on their own. And I know there are some mummies out there who take on the world and they're so good at doing it. But many of us need help. And it's for our own sanity, it's for our own family's health that we outsource some of the caregiving to family members or to professional help that are able to do so for us while we are working or while we are busy with something else. So when I talk about this difference in expectation, it can come in many forms. One example is that when new parents approach parenting and they make that decision to allow their parents or their family members to care for their child, they didn't realize at that point in time that there are going to be many layers of attachment and feelings that are going to go into the caregiving. So they probably expected that, okay, I need help with just day-to-day caregiving, and I'm not going to think very much more beyond that. Only to realize that, of course, over time, an attachment forms between the family member who is caring for the child, a very deep bond, in fact, because they spend day in, day out with the child. And to the point that, of course, when they are being told that you are only expected to care for my child and nothing more, you do not step into the discipline of things, or you are supposed to follow the way the rules that I set for the children, you're supposed to adhere to them 100%. That tends to rile up some tensions between the family unit. So that family member will naturally feel very upset. I have formed a bond with this child. I spend so much time with this child, but yet you're telling me that the way I am loving and caring for this child is wrong, and I shouldn't be giving this child this and that. So that could be the tension on that family member's side of the house, and the parents can feel, but hey, I am the parents of the child. Don't I have the right to decide how I want to bring them up? And you should respect my parenting style. You should respect the parameters that I set for the child. And even daily tasks, even down to just very seemingly mundane things like how to shower the child, what clothes do you wear for the child, and all these very basic things can even also become a breeding ground for conflict, right? So it can even get to the details like I don't like them to be showered this way, I don't like them to wear these type of clothes, and the caregiver will feel that, okay, but you're not the one doing it, right? I am the person who is caring for the child, and it's very easy for you to stand on the sidelines and comment about how it should be done, but when you're not the one doing it day in, day out, you don't understand the struggles that go into it. So there may be feelings of like you are trying to shut me out from this, you are not hearing me out, you're not empathizing with my struggles, and the parents feeling like you are overstepping. This is where we draw the line. If the children continue being brought up this way, they're not going to grow up the way I want them to. These are all the common things I hear from the conflicts that stem in this village of caregiving. And say years down the road, when such attentive caregiving is no longer necessary, when parents decide to send the children to school and they feel like okay, they no longer need such intensive care, and therefore they have informed the family member who is having to care for the child that you won't need to come by so frequently anymore, or I won't be sending the child to your house anymore. We're going to just do this. We're gonna let them go to school and come back and whatnot, or even we're gonna engage a helper who can now take care of all these things at home, so you don't have to do them. Sometimes the caregiver or the family member who has been so invested in that family for so many years, especially in the first few years, the most challenging years of parenthood, might feel like, oh, okay, so now don't need me already, then you can just chase me out lah, or you can just shut me down, so these feelings of being shoved to the sidelines, being driven out of the family can occur. And there's of course the example also where the parents might feel that they do not wish to have let that family member have too deep an involvement in the child's discipline or upbringing, for example, and that family member might feel offended by it because they would feel, I'm your family too, don't I have a right to say what's right and what's wrong when I see it, and don't I have a say in wanting the best for your child and for your family? Or it can even be that you don't devote enough time for us. You don't allow the children to spend enough time with us, so they are not as close with us as I want them to be. And one last conflict that I personally encountered and observed also from my conversations is when sometimes parents expect the closer members of their family, like their parents or a very close relative, to feel the same way they feel for their child, to really love them wholeheartedly without judgment for their child, because it's their very own baby here, right? And when these family members, it could be the grandparents or it could be a very close relative, can't really appreciate the child for who they are, or tend to pass judgment of the child and say, oh wow, this child is so naughty, like, oh wow, this child is spoiled. When they pass comments like that, it can be quite hurtful to the parents, and they may feel like, wow, you don't understand the child, you didn't take time to understand this child for who or she or he or she is, without first examining yourself or taking the time to see the good in the child. So I feel at the end of the day, a lot of all these conflicts that surrounds the topic of building that village when it comes to caregiving has a lot to do with the disparity in expectations. It's a very sensitive topic because it, more often than not, it touches on family lines and family bonds, and the level of involvement in the different levels of family is so complex that it's not just easy to say that, oh okay, for grandparents you get this much of involvement, for aunties and uncles you get this much of involvement, for paternal uncles and aunties, and for maternal, to get to that level of granularity is not logical, and I don't think it's very possible also to enforce something like that. So I don't think there is going to really be a one-size-fits-all solution to this, but it does boil down to managing those expectations and communicating those expectations. It will be helpful that new parents, even from the start of the family's expansion, to already communicate some of these things, of course in a cordial way, and also being mindful of the feelings of the family members who very much want to be involved in this new family, to share in the joy and the growing up of this newest member of the family. And also, I'm very sure that a lot of the family members, whatever advice they have, whatever involvement they want to be in, whatever leeways they're giving to the children, all stems from a place of love. It all stems from an angle of wanting the best for the parents, and also wanting the best for the children of these parents. And of course, a lot of them, given that they come from, a wealth of experience, they have experienced a lot more in life than these new parents have, they'd be very eager to share the wisdom, to share their experiences with these parents so that it might be a little bit easier for the parents as they navigate parenthood. Now, standing from the perspective of these new parents, even though a lot of these things are well intended and they come from a place of love, the way the parents receive them may be different from the way that family member who was sharing this advice, who was doing all these things, may perceive it to be. First of all, new parents can find it a little bit imposing when they have not been given the space to figure out parenting on their own. A lot of times, some things in life have to be learned by OJT, right? So if as senior members of the family, we allow the new parents the space to figure it out on their own, they are more likely to come to you when they hit a standstill and say, oh gosh, I don't know how to deal with this. This is a time that I would like to tap on the wisdom of more senior members of the family, and they would come to you voluntarily for advice, rather than if you're prescribing things to them unsolicited, uninvited, and you're just telling them what it should be done. I know it better and I want you to listen because I've gone through it before, and like that saying, I ate more salt than you have eaten rice in your life, so I know better, and all of that. You're more likely to hit a wall. You're more likely to hit a shut door because this comes uninvited. This comes unsolicited. It's not when they want it at the right time, when they need it, that you are giving this advice. So I'm very thankful actually to my in-laws and my parents for giving us that space of never telling us what you should be doing, how you should be raising a child, and telling me upfront that, oh, I don't like the way you're raising my grandchildren. Because they really respect our position as parents of the child, and they gave us the space to navigate parenthood and navigate our relationship with our children, to navigate how we want to discipline them, to navigate how we want to bring them up on our own. Because after all, we are a new family nucleus. We should be given that space to grow and learn within our own family. And oftentimes I also observe this is not just pertaining to the topic of building a village, but any kind of relationships, and even more so with parent-child relationships. I observe that when the advice comes unsolicited, when we are just telling our children what they should be doing or what they should not be doing in a stern, prescriptive, didactic tone, more often than not, we don't want to receive that, right? Because first of all, you're telling it to me when I don't want to hear it. And it always comes from a tone of, I know better than you do. I know better. And that is for a child who is trying to figure things out on their own, trying to discover the world on their own, this can be a very big turnoff. So children, I find, sometimes grow estranged from their parents also because of that. Not because their parents don't love them enough, but because there's too much love coming at them, not in the way that they want to be loved. That love has become imposing. That love has become suffocating almost, to the point that the children want to tear away from that kind of love. And until such time the parents learn to just be there and listen rather than to prescribe, until such time parents learn to give their children the space to be adults, the space to be parents, the space to discover who they need to be, their children are not going to be receptive to that kind of love. So while you're trying to figure out what's the best combination for your family, whether it is engaging professional help from a domestic helper, and spending weekends with the parents, or whether it is getting your parents, some other family member to help to care for the children while you're working, whatever it is that works best for you, I think it's important to set the expectations and to communicate all of these things before it actually starts. And in that communication, we have to exercise the ETLC, which I actually talked about in one of the episodes. I came up with the ETLC of communication: empathize, talk, listen, consistency. So it's the same thing in this situation. When I say you got to set the expectations and you got to communicate these expectations, you try to communicate them using these 4 facets. And that's how I feel that that village that you are building to raise the children can be a happy, it can be a healthy and a very conducive village for our children to grow up in and for us to also grow as parents. Thanks for tuning in to the Experimental Parent. Remember, we are all in this together. So if you have a story, topic suggestion, or feedback you'd like to share, we'd love to hear from you. You can DM me on the show's Instagram, The Experimental Parent, or leave a comment here. If you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to like or subscribe so you never miss out on future episodes. Your support means the world to us. So let us know, how was your experiment today?